Hello, welcome to the Biohackers live show. My name is Teemu Arina and I'm your host today. So there has been a quite a long break from our shows because I've been traveling around the world. I was in Southeast Asia, I was in Indonesia, I was in around Europe. Basically, just getting a little bit more perspective into what's going on in the world and also getting myself more centered. I think in today's life, when we're talking about biohacking, a lot of people are too much focused on the kind of ideology of kicking ass all the time, that you need to be better, faster, stronger, and fully focused on doing what you need to do like all the time and just getting stuff done. That's obviously one of the big reasons why we do things. But I think it's also super important to get a wider perspective occasionally, kind of focus for a moment. Today, for example, I've had quite a lot of work to do with an upcoming Biohacker Summit in Tallinn. That's going to be next week on Saturday, 15th of September. And yeah, I was working full time. I had a lot of tasks on my way, and then I decided to go to a sauna and take a shower. And when I was sitting in the sauna, I started meditating. And while I was meditating, all these thoughts came to me that I really need to focus on. Some things that I had ignored, some ways how I can really cut my workload to half, and all that. I noticed that this happens often when I take a break from the things that I do, when I'm going to for a nature walk, or I go to a sauna, or I might go to a gym, or I might spend some time with friends. So biohacking is, to me, it's all about the equilibrium. It's about the balance of things. And you have to also balance your focus and attention into what you do so that you're able to kind of laser focus into things and, finding the right way to do those in the most effective way, figuring out what is the 20% that will result in 80% of improvement. But at the same time, also taking perspective, taking a little bit of distance, asking yourself, reflecting, why am I doing this and what should I do next and how I can do these things better. And that's what often like travel does to me. And I have a lot of new perspective for this autumn. So we just published a new book called the Biohacker Stress Manual in Finnish. It's coming in English next year. We sold the first edition in 2 weeks. So a new one is coming up. So quite a popular addition to our existing Biohacker's Handbook Manual that is coming out in English later this year. But today, my guest is Siim, and he's a good friend of mine and probably familiar to many of you who have been following the Biohackers live show. And I'm going to bring Siim into this show. So Siim, how are you doing?
Hello, hello. I'm doing magnificent, as I like to say. And yeah, I totally agree with you in this sense, what you were already talking about, that biohacking is about not just optimizing yourself and not just being selfishly performance oriented, but also finding the balance of, looking at how your own behavior and how your own, let's say, well-being in terms of health and mindset is going to affect those around you as well. So I believe that that's what the ultimate goal of biohacking would be, to optimize yourself on the individual level so that those around you can also, gain some of that benefit. So yeah, looking forward to talking with you tonight, and it's been good.
Yeah, totally. So the idea of this discussion today is kind of getting us warmed up for the autumn and all the biohacking that we're going to do and all the new content that is coming out, and for the Biohackers Summit that is coming out. And with Siim, we're going to be diving deep into our upcoming conference and some of the topics in there. So I'm just going to show. Let's see here. Yeah. So if you go to biohackersummit.com, you can find the Biohacker Summit Tallinn. That's going to be on 14th to 15th of September. The main conference day is going to be Saturday, and we have a pretty hyped up speaker lineup coming up, and super interesting topics that we're covering, from ketogenic diets to decoding your lab tests and how to prevent serious health conditions happening in the future by engineering,
and also how to kick ass. There's going to be a lot of kicking ass.
Absolutely, a lot of kicking ass, more kicking ass than probably seen in a while. And yeah, it's a great exhibition. We also have the thermogenic spa that was in 2017 in Helsinki. So we're going to have a cryo cabin there. We're going to have an ice bath, some traditional wood heated saunas, and
yeah, that's one of the best things about, what kind of a conference can you go to where you can take an ice bath, take a sauna, and then go back listen to the speeches. Like that's nowhere else going to happen.
Yeah, totally. So and the upgrade dinner, obviously, which is for VIPs, it's still one of my top favorites in terms of workshops that are really combining everything that biohacking is all about. So we're working with Sami Talberg, the wild food chef, getting some local forage and great ingredients, and then we are combining traditional and culinaristic cooking and kitchen techniques with latest biohacks and deeper understanding of biochemistry. And people are gonna hands-on participate in this and learning how to really take the food on their plate to a new level. So Sami has been doing this with us alongside with Biohacker Summits for the last 4 years or so, 3-4 years. And it's a great event. So if you have time to come to Tallinn, it's a short boat short boat trip from Helsinki, a cruise. I mean, yeah. So Tallinn is great still at this time of the year. So one of the kind of key figures from this program that we're going to dive into in this podcast is this this circle that we made about optimizing human health. So this model for decoding and optimizing your health is something that we're going to be talking about in detail together with Siim today. But what we're going to start with is discussions on the topics that are of great interest to ourselves at the moment. So, Siim, what have you been kind of up to recently? What's been your kind of focus and interest?
Yeah, well, I've been always focused mostly on like nutrition and especially keto and intermittent fasting. Those are one of my biggest passions and one of the areas that I'm mostly knowledgeable about. But recently, I've been focusing a lot on trying to find this balance between this building muscle as well as longevity, because those things they tend to contradict each other, and there may be some situations where being very high performance oriented and being very oriented towards bodybuilding and things like that, you may kind of neglect the longevity, and you may actually decrease your lifespan if you don't know what you're doing. And that's what I've been trying to find, this sort of a balance and medium of incorporating these different strategies while trying to maximize longevity and overall health, while still being able to have the other critical component to longevity, which is maintaining lean muscle mass and maintaining strength all throughout the years. So that's what my speech is going to be about as well at the Biohacker Summit, and that's going to be like the future topic of my coming book later this year as well.
So to me, anabolism is all about things like sleep and recovery, and catabolism is things like the work that I do and the exercise that I do, all the stimulus. And to me, like, growth doesn't really happen in stimulus; it happens during rest. And there is increasing focus in the health and fitness scene, moving more also into understanding the balance that comes from recovery, and not just like constantly eating and exercising, but understanding that if you want to optimize that, you have to understand also the anabolic process. And anabolic process is not just taking anabolic steroids, right?
Yeah. It's like my speech is going to be about mainly balancing anabolism and catabolism with nutrition, and how these, or making people understand how these different nutrients, how these different macronutrients and how different foods affect the body's anabolic and catabolic balance or homeostasis. Mainly the main pathways that a lot of people already know about, or one of those big topics that are quite popular recently, are the things like autophagy and mTOR and AMPK. So those are going to be the main targeting points of my speech, where I talk about what they are and how do they affect us. So the person can gain the information of how they can actually control their biology in real time on their with their daily activities all the time.
So give me some, introduction into this topic. I'm pretty sure there are people listening who just lost you on mTOR and autophagy. What?
Yeah.
So give us a little explanation. What do you mean by these words, and why should people care?
Yeah, definitely. Well, your body is as a like the superorganism as your body is. It's always constantly trying to detect the presence of nutrients in your system, and based on those nutrients, it's going to either conduct these certain metabolic processes, namely like anabolism or catabolism. Is it going to promote DNA replication and cellular growth, or is it going to actually try to preserve its own resources and mobilize the resources it already has, so in hopes of surviving for longer? So there's this always constantly, your body is also constantly looking out for these different nutrients in your system, and the main signaling factors or the few sensors that are detecting this are like mTOR and AMPK. So mTOR is the main anabolic pathway of the human body, which is going to promote like things like protein synthesis, cellular growth, and everything that is related to growing and being anabolic, so to say. And the opposite to that is AMPK, which is another fuel sensor that gets elevated when you run out of nutrients and when you run out of your body's endogenous energy, so to say. So there's this constant process of monitoring, and whenever you do run out of your body's own internal resources, then AMPK is going to trigger this other metabolic pathway called autophagy, which is the process of cellular recycling. Basically, your healthy cells, they're going to start searching out for old and worn out cells to convert it back into energy. So it's your body eating itself so that it can survive for longer and get the energy it needs from the cells that it's not using. So these are the pathways that are responsible for growing and repair.
Right. So I'm showing people like what you're talking about. So I did a little Google search on AMP signaling pathway. So there is things like exercise that contribute to AMPK, and that leads then to a cascade of effects, including fatty acid metabolism, fatty acid synthesis, autophagy, and protein synthesis through mTOR.
Yeah, you can Google search like mTOR triad kinase. That has like a really good image that is showing like this, how these pathways, they interact.
If I understand correctly from this, what is key here is things like energy starvation. I guess that basically points to fasting. And are you saying that with intermittent fasting, you can activate AMPK, and that can lead into triggering the pathways that are helping you to maintain the homeostasis and to potentially support your longevity?
Yeah, that's correct. And that actually is one of the most surest ways, or one of the few ways scientists actually know how to prolong lifespan in any species is through intermittent fasting and caloric restriction. So those are the things that have been found to expand the lifespan of like yeast by 100% almost, and even more. So that's like double their lifespan if they consume less calories. And in monkeys can live also like 40% longer if they're fed fewer calories. So probably same principle applies to humans as well in some extent. But the one of the biggest culprits, or one of the biggest mistakes people tend to make, is that they kind of put caloric restriction and intermittent fasting into the same pot. Although they have like similar benefits and the similar mechanisms, you can be eating very little calories without activating the health benefits of autophagy, just because of you're feeding yourself all the time. So they've actually done a few studies where they show that the one of the most important factors that contribute to increased lifespan are linked to autophagy and not necessarily caloric restriction. You need autophagy to gain the longevity benefits. For instance, they did some studies with mice where they genetically mutated them so that they wouldn't be able to activate autophagy, and they found out that those mice didn't live longer. And whereas the other mice who did have the autophagy genes available, those mice were still able to live longer. So the key is to still being able to activate autophagy without necessarily having to deprive yourself from calories all the time, or at least not as much as you would think you need. You can still eat very much calories, maintain a lot of muscle mass, and still activate autophagy by being very diligent and very cautious with your timing of your feeding, and still gain the benefits of longevity. At least that's one of my theories, because you don't want to deprive yourself from calories for too long, because you're going to potentially lose a lot of muscle mass, which is another problematic thing when it comes to longevity. One of the reasons people die is because they're losing a lot of their muscle mass, and in so doing they're also sacrificing a lot of their metabolic health and their bone strength and things like that. So people age because of sarcopenia, which is linked to a lot of problems with metabolism and neurodegenerative issues, and not elevating mTOR enough. You need mTOR as well for longevity to maintain your lean muscle mass, and you never want to deprive yourself for too long. So the key is to find this balance between autophagy and mTOR, and to know how can you activate these genes at specific times that contribute both to your longevity and muscle maintenance.
Okay, so let's dive deeper into caloric restriction and intermittent fasting itself. It's often when people change their diet into a more fat-based diet, it can be easier for them actually to then restrict the amount of calories that they're eating, because fat gives them a more steady fuel source. So a good example might be some kind of drink like coffee or tea with some fat in the morning, and it's very satisfying. So you kind of easily skip any snacks that you might be craving for. So you're not getting into this yo-yo effect of being constantly hungry with the crashes of blood sugar. So that kind of leads easier for people with higher fat diets into caloric restriction as well as.
Yeah, it's like I mentioned, it's super easy for people to simply start off by skipping some meals every once in a while, to have these periods where they go into a deeper state of autophagy and a deeper state of ketosis. Those are one of the things that everyone can start off by, not feeling obligated to eat just because their doctor told them to, or just because they think it's going to be good for them. Whereas in reality, skipping a meal may actually be much more beneficial in the long run. So yeah, what I tend to advise for most people is to practice intermittent fasting, at least in some shape or form, every day. And that's going to be super convenient for body composition as well as productivity, and generally, yeah, I mean, being more activating more of those pathways towards longevity, like autophagy and things like that. But when it comes to balancing out with mTOR, then you can do it on a daily basis very easily. And I do it myself on a daily basis. So what I do is I extend my fasting window every day, at least until 18 or 20 hours. And then I eat my calories in a smaller time frame, maybe within like 2 to 4 hours at usually. So that's like a really good balance in my opinion. And at minimum, it would be people would want to fast for maybe like 16 hours every day to gain these benefits of going into at least like some mild autophagy. And to combine it together to actually have the mTOR pathway directed towards the right place, which is to build muscle tissue and drive protein synthesis, then I will also work out before I actually eat any food, so that the resistance training and lifting weights, that's going to activate the mTOR pathway, and that's going to drive the food that you do eat into the right spot, so to say, and you're going to use it for more quality anabolism and quality muscle gain instead of like fat gain or something.
Right. Doesn't also activate the GLUT4 receptor on cells so that they shovel the circulating glucose into the muscle instead of somewhere else?
Yeah, that's true. Like even like very short contractions of maximum effort, like doing isometric holds with some push-ups or something like that in a plank hold, that's going to also already activate some GLUT4 receptors on your muscles, which are going to which are going to help insulin direct the sugar and the food into the cells much faster and replenish glycogen.
Be the kind of, call it kind of like a minimum effective dose. So probably with exercise, you don't mean that you need to go for a 30-minute gym thing or just running around. So what's your protocol? Let's say you're in a restaurant, you've been fasting, and you decide to have a huge meal with some some sweet potatoes, and you have some rice and all kinds of things. You're getting some glucose. It's evening now. What kind of exercise protocol would you do that when you come to the table, that the other people are not going to look at you like, what's going on here, man?
Yeah. Generally, for the GLUT4 receptors, even as little as maybe like 90 seconds of exercise of some resistance training can activate the GLUT4 receptors and make you more insulin sensitive. But generally, what my minimal effective dose exercise would be something very high intensity and with very short rest intervals. Maybe like this. My go-to exercise, like I think that would be like the biggest bang for a buck, would be like burpees, regular burpees, where you go down into a deep squat, you push yourself into a push-up position, you do the push-up, and then you jump back up. So that's like a very strenuous exercise, and it's quite difficult, especially if you do it like at a very rapid pace. So when I'm usually like traveling, or if I'm short on time, then my go-to exercise for the day can be even as little as 5 minutes of burpees, of doing maybe like 100 burpees with some resting very little in between sets, and that's gonna be very well enough for that. But also maybe like simply, if you were to do it at a restaurant or something, you can maybe hold some isometric contractions or something that may be activating these GLUT4 receptors. And easy exercises for that, maybe like holding the horse stance with your feet sideways and being in this like a deep squat holds, or doing something like the planche, which will also activate the muscles in your shoulders and upper body mostly.
Yeah, I'm also showing here just a simple wall sit. A simple wall sit would be actually pretty good to do in a restaurant. You can even go to a toilet and do something like this.
Although the convenience was slightly more difficult.
Yeah, totally. So let's go back to the health effects of this. So you're obviously doing these things for a purpose, for also to make sure that you're shoveling most of the glucose that you're then getting into muscle growth. But if we look at the health effects of this autophagy, so what it contributes to is stronger immune system, better cardiovascular function, prevention of type 2 diabetes and fatty liver. With the strengthening immune system, you can better fight off infectious disease, cancer, and you can also prevent neurodegenerative diseases. and things related to premature cell death, inflammation, and aging. Is that right?
Yeah, it's so true. Then autophagy is linked to most of these things related to aging in general, and one of the best contributing factors to it is that it can also maintain your mitochondrial functioning as you age. So there's this theory of that one of the reasons people age is that their mitochondria become more dysfunctional, and the mitochondria are the powerhouses of your cells that produce energy. So as you age, your mitochondrial functioning is going to drop, and that is also going to be this domino stone that is going to lead to all of these other age-related diseases and issues. So with autophagy, you can actually start recycling those mitochondria that are damaged and that are slowing you down, and you're going to convert them back into energy. So there's this additional process called mitophagy, which is like basically mitochondrial autophagy. So yeah, that's going to be keeping away the bad stuff that is causing you inflammation and slowing you down, and using those building blocks back into new things that are that can be used as like new building blocks. So one of the reasons it's like an accumulation. People accumulate a lot of waste, and because of poor nutrition habits and because of poor nutrient timing, they're going to inhibit the recycling process as well. So they're constantly accumulating. So that's one of the biggest reasons why the general diet in the West for the mainstream people is going to be very thing that isn't going to support their longevity.
Right. I'm actually showing here an image of mitochondrial health. So in this image, you notice how caloric restriction combined with physical activity leads into the activation of mitophagy and mitogenesis, and that leads into, I guess, lower inflammation and better stem cell function. And then you have the better mitochondrial function is related to the ability to deal with reactive oxygen species, basically low level inflammation. And if this process doesn't work very well, or you have reduced physical activity, deregulation of hormonal activities, then an inflammation that can lead into premature aging.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, fascinating. So let's go. Let's shift gears a little bit. So these are some of the topics that you're preparing a talk that you're going to be presenting at the Biohacker Summit in Tallinn.
Yeah,
and the main topic of the event is decoding optimal health. And you start here also by saying, so we're actually organizing this together with Siim. So Siim is one of the curators. The wealth of a nation is determined by the health of its people. The best healthcare is disease prevention through an optimized lifestyle. You don't have to sacrifice your health or well-being for getting better results at work, school, or sport. And that biohacking is the art and science of understanding your human physiology for the sake of improving your health, longevity, professional performance, productivity, and wellness. So we are covering several topics that are related to optimizing health and well-being. What we just discussed about in terms of autophagy, which I still can't pronounce, and mTOR pathways and AMPK and mitochondrial function. Those are all kind of the deeper understandings that are coming from science and understanding human physiology. So once you are more aware of some of those patterns that are going on in your system, you can then start to time your lifestyle decisions, like we just discussed, in terms of exercise timing, eating timing, all of those to better help that system to support your general health and well-being. And what we start with in the conference, and we have actually organized all the talks into 3 different categories. In the crusade for optimal human health. We start from decoding health. What we just discussed was about more about optimizing health to be able to transform health through exercise and dietary interventions and fasting. So decoding health starts by getting a picture of the terrain, getting the map basically of what's going on in your system. So you can start from genetic testing so that you better understand what cards have been played for you. You can start from blood tests, which is basically diving deeper into your current status of your system. If you have the right micronutrients, what is the level of inflammation that you're dealing with? What is the lipid profiles and your blood sugar control? How those are contributing on the foundations to your ability to even optimize your health, and also to better understand what to optimize, what to strive for. So that's what self-quantification really is all about. On the surface, it might be about using like activity trackers. I have the Oura Ring here, the new one, nice. which measures my stress level and my physical activity, how much I sit, and changes my body temperature. That might be an indicator of immune system function, and heart rate variability, better understanding of stress. When you combine data like that with the data coming from your biochemistry and genetics, and hopefully in the future also epigenetics, you can better understand, you can decode the current status of your health. So how, Siim, are you personally doing these steps? So how are you starting to better understand your map, your terrain, for then to be able to optimize through interventions coming from science and theories in your books, to be a better functioning human being?
Yeah, like you said it very well, that it creates the map that you can follow, and if you don't really have a map, then you're kind of winging it, and you don't really know you don't have the general direction of what's actually working, or where should you head in the first place. So yeah, what I tend to do is I try to keep myself on track with my general biomarkers from the doctor, and to see what nutrients I might need, and whether or not if I'm deficient in any of them, so I can change some of my so I can change my nutrition in some aspects. But generally, like I also use different ways to quantify my overall life, whether that be with the Oura Ring. I also have the Oura Ring, and that's like a really good tool for bringing more awareness about your daily activities, and to use these technologies that are more objective than your human mind, in a sense, because the human brain can try to deceive itself all the time. And especially with things like sleep, you can't really know how well you sleep based on your own subjective feeling. Of course, you can feel the difference, but how do you know how much hours you actually got, like REM sleep or deep sleep, and whether or not maybe you're actually staying awake without you even knowing it? So these technologies, they kind of bring more awareness into your life, and they can reveal some of the blind spots that you may have. And with that knowledge you gain, you can then re-optimize your life around those results.
Yeah, we have one of these companies who is doing this decoding. Actually, there's probably a few ones. We're still confirming some of the exhibitors, but one definitely is going to be Synlab. And Synlab is the leading, one of the biggest laboratory testing companies in Europe, if not the biggest. And personally, I've been going to Estonia to get my lab tests done. So they have a bunch of different panels. So you can do general health risk panels. You can do a panel that's designed for vegetarians. You might be doing a panel that's great for assessing thyroid function or liver function. You can look at your micro elements and micronutrients and vitamins. You can do a fatty acid panel to better understand things like omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, and so on. And if you are dealing with potential infectious disease or allergies, you can also gain a better understanding of gut function, your allergies, and if you have Lyme disease or not. And one of the speakers kind of guiding us into this is going to be Tommi Vaskivua. He is the CEO or the managing director of SynLab, and he's coming over, and he will be sharing some of his insights into how to do this properly. And if you're coming to Biohacker Summit in Tallinn, this is a great opportunity to get your lab tests done at a fraction of the price, because Estonia is a very cheap place to do these things. And SynLab is going to be there. You'll be able to do your lab tests and get the results online. So they deliver those through email. So you get the results, and then you can go to a doctor, a friend, or a biohacker, whoever, or you can study yourself how to interpret the results. But or you can get consultation from SynLab directly on your results. So that's a great one to look into. We also here in Finland we launched just recently something called Health DX. And Health DX, or Terve DX in Finnish, is actually using, I can't say it officially that it's SynLab, but it's Medix Laboratories, and Medix Laboratories was bought by SynLab recently. But basically, it's the same standardized tests. And what we have done with this, we have chosen the biomarkers that are of priority when it comes to better understanding of your current status of your health and well-being. And what we did in terms of the analysis in this service, we looked deeper into what is the optimal state. So instead of looking what is within a reference range, we are looking at what is the optimal for something in your lab results. We have things like highly sensitive testosterone tests, which will show results also in women. The typical normal testosterone tests, they don't show anything in ladies because it's not sensitive enough. So we have that. In terms of lipid panels, we look at things like lipoprotein ApoA. So we are looking at particle size and triglycerides and so on. So you better understand the real risk of cholesterol, especially if you combine that with your insulin signaling. So we are looking at insulin. We are looking at fasting blood glucose and long-term blood sugar, and we're looking at inflammation markers like highly sensitive C-reactive protein and homocysteine. So I'm pretty stoked to share also in my own contribution to the Biohacker Summit in Tallinn some of our experience of doing this part of decoding, and also obviously all the stuff that comes from using different activity trackers. I watch here that is doing 24/7 tracking of my stress levels, my heart rate variability, and I combine that with the data from Oura, and I have a bunch of other things. So I would be happy to share anything that I know. So the next step of optimizing human health is, once you have some kind of understanding of the map, it's good to remember that the map is not the terrain. You have to go to the terrain, and you have to do the things yourself to really see what works and what doesn't. And that leads us to optimizing health. And that's all the biohacking interventions and self-experiments that you're doing based on your research and data, and then guided by that research and data and expert opinion. You have a hypothesis that if I do this, that might happen. So if I exercise before I eat a high glucose meal, that might reduce my risk of getting diabetes, and will improve my ability to shovel that excess glucose into muscle growth, and that will improve my current status in terms of health, also including inflammation. So now you have a hypothesis, and then it's all about implementing that experiment And the transformation really comes from learning. So the feedback loops. So you do something, you see how you feel, you do more lab tests, you talk to experts, and next time around you have an even better hypothesis, even better designed experiment, or new questions or new answers to your current situation. So you can, the way how I think about it is that the faster the feedback loops, the faster the learning, and the faster also your progress towards optimal human health. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree that there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. You can have all the information in the world, but it's worthless unless you take action on it, or unless you implement the changes. You can know everything about autophagy or mTOR or whatever it is. You can know a lot about sleep, but unless you actually make some of the changes, then it's worthless. It's you can throw it away and be done with it. So definitely, like, yeah, it's one of the critical steps of taking action on the things you learn.
It's surprising to me how many people do a lot of things in terms of health and they never measure. So they're never getting the data if what they're doing is really working.
That's true.
So I have here what I have here. I have a freaking red light. So this thing is supposedly lowering my inflammation. I can do this. I have a cup of coffee with some fats and some things that are supposedly boosting my cognitive performance. And yeah, I have a bunch of exercise equipment here. I have things on the back that are helping with improving the air quality. But in the end, if I do all of these things, what do I know about which one of those really do anything? Which one of those really work? The real insights come from personal inquiry and hard data that I'm getting from more objective sources and expert opinion also, like and studies and research that probably these things work. But we have to kind of walk the path and measure the things in our own case to see if it works for us and what doesn't. Because if you do all the biohacking, you can spend all your day doing biohacking. And how do you know what is the 20% that will result in 80% of improvement?
Yeah, you can get lost in the weeds, so to say. You can do biohacking just for the sake of biohacking without getting the health benefits or not improving your life. So the key is to, find out what is giving you the most results, what is the most effective biohacks for you, and then, focus in hard on those things that are actually going to work.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's also like a very critical thing to focus on the basics and getting the basics covered, whether that be like nutrition, exercise, and sleep, before you try to add like some miracle supplements or things like that, because they're not going to work that effectively. So that's why it's like it should be like a holistic approach of looking at it as a holistic system and building it up from the ground up with the fundamental knowledge.
Yeah. So you're absolutely on the money here. Now, looking at our kind of model for optimizing human health, and looking at the program in Tallinn that we have put together, which one of the speakers are you most kind of interested in personally when it comes to optimizing your health? So all the self-experiments. Who are the people who you think you can learn real practical tricks and tips that are founded in research and experience that you trust, that you are personally looking forward to?
Mm-hmm. Well, like, I think we have a really good lineup in the sense we have all the areas of your health covered. Nutrition, sleep, and some other biohacks and exercise. But one of the things that I'm really looking forward to, of maybe like from the scientific perspective of finding some real quantifiable or some real real world experiments, not only on my own experience, but also like on a population level. I think it will be Dr. Sviatoslav Kanenko from Ukraine, and he has his own clinic, and he does like more biohacking interventions in addition to the standard medical care. So that's something I can look forward to hear in terms of like finding out what he does to treat his patients and what are the stories that come from there.
So Kanenko is putting into practice all the biohacking, and he comes from a background of being a doctor of modern medicine, but he's taking a approach that is more preventive and more based on health optimization. In current society, health is defined as the absence of sickness, and the absence of sickness is basically the fact that you are within some laboratory test results,
that you're barely surviving.
You're barely surviving, and the symptoms are kind of not severe enough to require treatment or a diagnosis of disease. But the more kind of biohacking approach to this is to figure out not just that there is an absence of sickness, but there is the presence of optimal human performance, health, and well-being. And this is where modern technology, modern diagnostic methods come to play that we can learn definitely from him. And one thing that I'm interested in terms of measuring things, decoding health, is Michael Lundell's presentation on assessing your ketosis with breath ketones. So if you are doing intermittent fasting or you're doing ketogenic diets, how do you know if you're in ketosis and how that's kind of really affecting you? So Ketonics is from Sweden, and they've developed a device for understanding better the current state of your ketosis. So you understand also how your body is functioning in response to fasting and food. So that's one thing that I would be looking forward to. In terms of like practical value, I'm really interested to listen and also personally participate in teachings of Kiki Bosch. Kiki has really kind of, I mean, it's just in the last few years, she's been to Biohacker Summit a few times, and she's now a trained Wim Hof method instructor, and she's diving these icebergs all around the world, and the kind of colds that she is exposing herself to can be really like sub-zero temperatures, and she has not the easiest life either behind her, which has been very open to share, and for somehow like this working with cold has helped her to get out of her comfort zone, and by working on that, she's been able to balance herself out and really like find a completely new gear to her life. This is just my interpretation of what's going on. I'm really looking forward to seeing her work. And in terms of photography, Kiki Bosch has really,
and she's gonna help. She's gonna help people with the ice bath as well, and teach them how to control the reflexes and responses to the cold, and kind of how to get comfortable being uncomfortable, so to say.
Yeah. I'm showing some footage from her one of her YouTube videos, which is beautiful stuff. Just gonna skip forward to the beef here. Yeah, there she is. And she's been to amazing locations where the top water temperature is freezing zero, and shooting footage of that. But at the Biohacker Summit, all of us will be able to learn from her how to do breath work and how to better deal with things that are really pushing you. And to practically enable this, we have the thermogenic spa, where people can expose themselves to extreme colds, like minus, I don't know, 100 degrees or something like this, with the thermogenic the cryo chamber, but also traditional ways of just ice baths. And you'll be able to learn some of the breathing techniques from the Wim Hof method to be able to deal with cold temperatures. So if you ever want to experience this, now is your chance.
Yeah, it's one of those things that a lot of people aren't exposed to at all, like the cold, and they're afraid of it. But yeah, cold has also like very good health benefits, and it can, in connection to the things that we've been talking about today, it's like cold can activate AMPK as well and stimulate like some of the longevity pathways. So yeah, it's super good.
Another one that I'm really looking forward to in this context is Dr. Ali Binazir. He is 3-time TEDx speaker. He comes from a background of neuroscience, and he's from US. And he's really into happiness engineering and engineering your mental software. And his presentations are extremely entertaining, and will give very practical tools how you can optimize your mental state for better health and well-being, and how you can like practically really do that. Personally, I'm going to be talking about similar topics, but not necessarily from a neuroscience perspective, more from a behavioral perspective on how you can hack your habits. I think in the end, if we are talking about our model here, optimizing human health, the path that you walk is super important. The feedback loops are super important. If you are changing yourself, it starts from changing the basic programming in your biology. It comes from the realization that we are already trained biological computers and machines, and we tend to repeat patterns of behavior. And it's very hard sometimes to change yourself. It's very hard to get out of existing behavioral patterns. And I'm going to be talking about some of the techniques founded in science and practicality that anyone can do to change their own behaviors towards better. I don't believe in willpower. I don't think having more willpower is the problem. I think it's really about hacking the context. It's hacking your environment in such a way that it supports better health and well-being, and makes it more likely that you will change your behaviors towards better. So that's what I'm going to be diving deeper into. And my colleague, Jaakko Halmetoja, he's such a poet when it comes to really narrating all of these things. So he's going to be closing up the conference with decoding symbiotic relationship with you and your environment. And he's diving into the fact that it's not about hacking yourself, it's not about optimizing yourself, but it's more about understanding and optimizing and hacking your relationship to your environment. And by increasing your symbiotic role with your environment, that includes human and biological, like plants and food and nutrition, animals even, friends, family, all of
Bacteria.
that. Bacteria, your microbiome, and also non-biological organisms or systems. Humans are one system. The plant kingdom is one system, but also the technological dimension, the kind of non-human dimension. So how do you kind of work with your relationship to your tools and technologies that are extensions of you? So I'm interested in talking about that and thinking about that with anyone who's coming to the conference. And we have a lot of interesting stuff coming up. So if you haven't yet booked your ticket for the Biohacker Summit, you can do so on the website. We still have a few tickets left. You can still get the early bird ticket at $220. If you're coming with a friend, you can use the code FRIEND, and that will give you a 50% discount on that price. So you get it around $100. And we also have student tickets for 50 euros. And if you can't join in person, we have a live stream available as well. So that's one of the best ways to kind of get the full conference recording, because we have very high end multiple camera recordings with really high quality audio, and we're packaging that up. So you will be able to watch that live. And if you can make every single one of those, you can also just then download every single video afterwards, including the presentations and descriptions of the speakers and all the extra material that we provide. So that's great value if you can't really come in person. But if you come in person, there's all those experiences, and we are announcing tomorrow, I guess, also the upgrade offsite. So those tickets will go out fast. That's going to be on Sunday. It's going to be on the 16th of September, and that's when we are going to have how did you describe that, Siim? Like a whole body kind of experience?
It's like a fully immersive body mind trip and experience that's going to involve understanding how to develop more intuition with your body, as well as how to start controlling your nervous system in response to different stimuli. So we're going to do things like some acro yoga in Tallinn, and in the afternoon we will also have like a trip to the countryside where we'll do some saunas and practice some breath work as well, to kind of get more in touch with our physiology and to learn how to become more mindful of it. So developing our own neurofeedback almost, and that's one of the things we're doing there. And we're also going to have a saunas, which is another way to get some hormesis and trigger that some of the growth hormone. So it's quite awesome experience, I think. And definitely, like, if you do want to get like the full experience of Biohacker Summit, then I would definitely encourage getting the VIP ticket. With that's also going to include the upgraded dinner the day before the main event, and the offsite. So it's like a full package. And I've been coming for the Biohacker Summit since last year, and it's like really amazing experience, because you get to meet all the speakers, and you actually make new friends that are gonna last for the entire lifetime. And yeah, it's super exciting for it.
You can learn from all of us, and not just the speakers, but the audience members. I've been looking at the attendee list, and oh boy, I can tell you, the people who are coming there are all super experts on whatever they're doing, and there's a ton of learning that you can do from them. So this is more like a retreat than a conference. It's really reasonably priced, and you can do your blood work simultaneously. So if you've been planning to do that, this is your opportunity for getting some of the decoding done as well, and then have all the tools and experiences and learning that will help you to take your health to the next level. So with that, I encourage everyone to check out biohackersummit.com. You should also check out the YouTube channel of our guest today, Siim Lund, and you can find that by searching for Siim Lund on YouTube, and siimlund.com. There is a bunch of books on ketogenic diets and all that stuff. And what I really like about the stuff that you are doing is just the entertaining way how on your videos you are communicating such complex topics like autophagy and mTOR functioning and gut-brain axis and you name it. For me, that has been super revealing. So thank you very much for being such a teacher and guide already at such an early age. It's so important that we get people to think of these things not only as a profession that they're going to graduate in, like when they are 30, but that they start practicing the right way, through the passion that they do. And Siim is definitely an embodiment of that, with his experiences from strenuous and hard military training, getting really interested in how to optimize himself and cope with stress and live long, and all the work that you're putting into it. And you were here in Finland recently, and damn man, you're really a machine. Olli, my co-author, Mr. Soviarvi, the doctor, he also said like, damn, this guy is getting stuff done. So you can learn from Siim also. So I recommend you guys to come over.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And yeah, everyone who, you can meet everyone else as well, the speakers, and it's going to be a really good networking event and making new connections and gaining a lot of like invaluable information about optimizing your body and living a healthier and longer life.